I did think about something on my bike ride this morning that this might be a good place to inject it right quick in the beginning of this. I was thinking a lot about the role environment plays in creativity, right? Our environment, we spend so much time putting together our studios, our creative spaces. If you're a painter, you set up an easel so you can look out a window and trying to get all this this inspiration, this ability to feed ourselves with inspiration. And a lot of people don't think about, or at least I never did, about the digital environment. Like we go into this computer screen, whether it's Ableton, Pro Tools, Logic, in audio specifically, it could be Final Cut Pro for someone else. And we don't think about customizing that environment. So all these tools, like I think we were talking about so many different saturation plugins last week and things. And then this morning I thought to myself, what if I told everybody on this live stream to delete every plugin that they have except for one of each tool, right? Or in Pro Tools, it lets you put things into an unused plugin folder. You don't even have to fully commit to delete it. But when I go into my plugin menu, and I view it in manufacture a lot of the time. Like I do a lot of the type search in Pro Tools. But if I want to see it by manufacturer, I only have what I use. I can't think of a plugin in there that I've never used, and I probably have 4 or 5 of each tool that I'll go for different reasons, right? But I've spent so much time overusing one or two to know what it's great for. I think a lot of people haven't overused the one yet. So I just thought about that today. What if you only used FabFilter's bundle to make a record, whether it's mixing or producing, for 4 or 5 months? What if you just used that? Yeah. What if you only used Softtube's bundle? What if you have all these plugins? What if you only used one company for a minute, and then trade off, and you'll maximize? So when you say 808 saturation, 909 saturation, first of all, those are completely different instruments made by the same company, like totally. That resembles each other. So neither would maybe my saturation choice. But if I only had one, I'm sure I can make it work for both.
I like that. I like that idea a lot. I mean, yeah, please.
Just one more thing, and then I want to hear. Just coming onto this live, I'm trying to take what I learned from my one of my business partners in conversations, Michael. Right, Michael is always trying to understand what the audience's takeaway is going to be, and I'm a bit of a riffer and a spewer of ideas that come to my mind. You're like Michael. You're trying to reinforce what I say and kind of narrow it down to, well, what are we giving people listening? And I want to continuously give people challenges. And a way to practice what we talk about on here, because I get pretty heavy. I can get pretty heavy into the technical aspect of what saturation is and does, and I don't even go half as deep as other people. But I would love to say you should try something specific, so there's a takeaway from our conversations together.
That's great. I wanted to just flag one thing real quick. Todd in the chat asked about second versus third order harmonic distortion. Check out our live from last week. It's on my IGTV. We basically spent a whole hour talking about our knowledge of harmonic distortion and saturation and things like that.
We're just pretty usable. It's a usable discussion. It's not super geeky, and I don't want to get super geeky with these things. So I want to talk usability.
Well, yeah, like I said, when I started Googling about it, I realized how deep it can get. I need to buy a coffee before this. I love this. What up, Tito?
I had 3 before this, so
somebody did ask about your coffee intake. That'll be a question maybe for next time. When you're talking about creative environments, I think it's interesting to think about it digitally specific. I think most people don't even think about. I mean, you and I have been doing this for so long and worked with so many different people. We've seen so many different environments and seen how people set up their environments. For people starting out, figuring out what tools you're using, we live in a for us, it's sort of a new era, although it's standard now. But for people coming up, you have access to everything. You have all the crayons possible. You have every shade of every plugin. You have 9 million different EQs. And narrowing things and focusing things and strategies of how to do that, super, super important. And the truth is, if you have one EQ plugin, you're going to be able to do 99% of everything you can do EQ wise with pretty much all of them. There are, we get into the very specific details of utilizing things for a certain kind of top end saturation. It gets very, those are very important to some people that might be watching and important to us. But also when I'm producing something, it's just like, give me an EQ plugin. And I go consistently to, now I use FabFilter, the Pro Q. And I think it's a really good idea actually, is for people to
EQs ever made. One of the best tools ever made overall. It's a dynamic EQ in there too. So it's
spectrum analyzer.
And mix a whole record with just that as an EQ.
Yeah.
I would say try that. That's why I say FabFilter first, because it's some of the most versatile tools. So for saturation, if you want to use Saturn and you want to use the EQ, use Pro Q3, you can do a whole record with just that, right? I guarantee it. You can make a record sound really professional with ears, proper monitoring, and those two plugins, 100%.
Yeah. One of the things from a production perspective, I have a few analog synths that don't have presets, and that's one of the ways that I get out of you have unlimited options for things where, like I have a Juno 6, the first Juno that does not have presets, does not have MIDI. So every time I touch a knob, it's literally a brand new sound that's never existed before.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing is super important for the creative environment to be able to get out of the unlimited option. So maybe that's the theme of today, is trying to limit things and get everything you can out of them. I was hoping so, because I had two thoughts that I was coming into from the bike ride this morning, and that was the main one. But really, it's a whole world of understanding and I'll specifically talk about audio engineers, but we can more generalize and say audio makers, like creators of anything audio. I'm coming from it as an engineer standpoint, but I think this will translate overall, is what motivates us in general, right? Mm-hmm. And motivation is something that wavers, right? So, for example, we're motivated right now on safety in the world of understanding coronavirus. And we could be motivated by fear in that way. We can be motivated by love for others and protection of others. So many things that we could be motivated. So what motivates an audio engineer, and how does that stand in different contexts and times? So OG motivation for me and for a lot of people my age still and younger was survival, right? So we're motivated by work, survivability factor, trying to make rent, have enough money for food on the basic level. And that's one motivation. But my new motivation, I think something that probably a lot of people relate to, is I want to get to the desired result that's in my head or my heart or my body as fast as possible. So thinking about the digital environment, creative physical environment too, these are both super important. And I was only talking about the digital environment because I don't think a lot of people think about that, is how do we get there faster? So if I say delete everything but what you need to get somewhere, you're going to get there faster because, just physically speaking, you're going to look at the menu of options less. That's just on a fundamental objective level. You'll get there slightly faster, right? But when you learn the tool to its mastery level, or as close as possible, you'll be able to get what's in your head out faster with multiple tools at some point. So that's just a kind of an overall theory that I have towards speed, and not speed in a lazy sense of I just want this to be done. Speed in a sense of, no, I can now do more, and then I could be motivated by other things like spending time with people that I love, with other hobbies and passions, and you know what I'm saying. It leads into a conversation about workflow generally. It's something that I love having new options. It makes me feel like I have more potential and cool new things, but it always slows me down. Yeah, because it's always like, I got this new plugin and it's so awesome and I'm going to produce this thing today. And then I spend 30 minutes trying to figure out how to make the envelope and then all of a sudden I've lost the momentum of excitement. And there's so much about what we do, even if you're from songwriter to mastering engineer and everything in between, the ability to feel excited about something is really what gets us to do our best work.
Yeah.
And that is not a long process often. It's often something that goes in bursts. And if you don't have a workflow that allows you to execute quickly, you're going to lose a lot of that. I mean, it's especially true with songwriting, where somebody's in a certain mode, and if I'm producing the session, or if something is slow in the process, then you just lose the thing that. But it's the same in engineering and mixing, mastering, everything. And one of the things, Chris Wallace, who I produced with for a long time, and is a great artist and a great friend of mine, he is obsessed with workflow stuff. When he transitioned from artist to producer, writer, although he's still is doing artist stuff again. But when he sort of got deep into production, he was obsessed with workflow, and it was something that I'd kind of taken for granted. And he's like, yeah, but you can do this quicker. You can do it this way, and realizing what that allows for was really important. And it basically you have an idea in your head and you get there quickly. So limit of choice, ease of use, efficiency of computer setup. And then we get into the bigger things like meditation and exercise and diet and those sort of things that keep you focused. I mean, that's a deep topic.
You want to be prepared, right?
Yeah.
So understanding the tools allows you to be prepared. Now, I'm not trying to discourage from experimentation and learning new tools. It probably took me about a month after FabFilter Saturn and all the hype my engineer community was talking about. Oh, it's so sick the day it came out. It's like, cool. I mean, I'm sure I'll try that, but I'm not going to try it when all this hype is going on because I don't want that bias, right? Now, after a proper assessment, after hype died down on a new plugin, I've assessed it pretty deeply, and it's pretty great, right? It's still not, I wouldn't say it's the best. I'm not going to say only use that, but I think it is a tool that should be learned to get a desired result yet again. But there should be experiment time, but there's also time that someone is hiring you to get a job done. And depending on the deadline of that, it's not really for you to learn a new tool. It's for you to apply the knowledge that they're coming to you for, right? So now, granted, this is a new writing day, new artist. You found a new synth. You can argue that would work, but also if you want to get that song and that artist or that writer inspired to write melody, you actually might want to put down a very strong fundamental synth sound that is going to provoke a certain emotion, right, and connection for them to get their voice heard too. So you might actually get in the way of that by spending an hour. I mean, I've heard this from writers, specifically writers that never produce. It's like, why was that dude working on a snare drum for an hour when I'm just trying?
I've been that dude,
right?
Yeah.
Melody, snare drum, they both matter, but at different times. Yeah. And that might not be the time for you to focus on the snare drum sound. Right?
It's I guess the answer to the topic is be aware of when to use what, because those of us that are producing or mixing or anything, finding new tools and new inspiration for yourself is hugely important. And then there's times when you really need to execute. And so make sure that you're thinking about those two different ways to approach, or two different mindsets when you're doing stuff.